On the eve of the first of two college football playoff semifinals, it's second helping right here on Reier on YouTube. Travis Reier back with you alongside my great friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Beaird. Brent, of course, longtime college football analyst, most recently for First Coast News down in Jacksonville, Florida, and also a voter for the Heisman Trophy. So we certainly take that into account as well with Brent. Brent, plenty to get into since we last spoke. That was before the
Yes,
holidays. Hope you and yours had a safe, joyous, and merry holiday season.
we did. Well, we have a new grandchild in the family who was born in
Mm.
March, so he's been a joy, and he's growing like a my parents used to say he's growing like a weed. Well, he's growing like a linebacker, really.
Nice.
Is what's going on. But yes, we did, but we had a good Christmas and good New Year's and it's hard to believe that well, we're actually here with the semifinals, and then got a break for the before the national championship game. We'll talk about some of the timing, but I'm still curious, Trav, if they're going to simplify the month of January anytime soon.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, we've
It
got
is.
college football playoffs January
Mm-hmm.
1st, New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. Now we're
Mm-hmm.
into the semifinals on January 8th and 9th. And with all
Mm-hmm.
that, we've got transfer portal humming,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely whirring. We've got coaching news. We've got NFL decisions. We have
That's
got
right.
everything kind of coming together here in college football. And we're going to stick with obviously more so the SEC perspective, and it's interesting to me, Brent, because a year ago when we did this before the semifinals, instead of Ole Miss, it was Texas that was
Yes.
left standing. So
Yeah.
the last couple of years, it hasn't been Georgia and it hasn't been Alabama at this
Yes.
point of the college football playoff.
Yeah. They obviously Georgia, Bama involved in the playoffs, but they certainly didn't go as far as they wanted to. I think one of the more interesting stats that I've seen so far, and I give Chase Parham credit for this. Of the four teams, the final four, Ole Miss has a 68,000 seat stadium, Miami a 64, Oregon a 60, and Indiana, who may win it all, has a 56,000 seat stadium. Trav, what in
Yeah.
the world? That tells us something, does it not?
Yeah, it does. It tells us that tickets will probably be plentiful in Atlanta and Glendale coming
Yeah,
up in the next
really.
couple nights. And it sounds like that is the case. And I'm
Yes.
joking, obviously. It's a very, very interesting stat. I
Mhm,
do think we have seen a trend of late in terms of downsizing
mhm,
capacities
mhm.
around really every sport,
Yes.
every significant sport, whether it's major league sports, whether it's P4 football. Amenities are obviously a big part of it. But hey, yeah, I do think when you talk about Ole Miss and Indiana specifically, which is kind of what I'm sure we're getting at with a stat
Yeah.
like that, it does say a lot about this particular Final Four for FBS college football. But Ole Miss, just an amazing story with everything that's
Yes.
going on
Yes.
with Lane Kiffin moving on to LSU, Pete Golding now. I kind of joked on X. Pete Golding's going to have to get an extension before his first regular season game. He already has a contract. They're
Yeah.
going to have to extend him now because he's 2-0
Yeah.
in the college football playoff. But what a football game on New Year's night in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh.
Trinidad Chambliss, just magical. We had talked about it through the season that if Ole Miss gets enough from Keywan Lacey in the run
Mhm,
game, that
mhm.
makes them even more difficult to deal with. Ole Miss possession efficiency in that game against a defense like that everyone would attest had stepped up throughout the
Yeah.
course of the season
Yeah.
with that Georgia D, made it look easier than it was at times. Chambliss obviously had a lot to do with that. But when you've got a kicker in college football that can make kicks from 55 plus
Yeah. Yeah.
multiples and then
Yeah.
hit a game winner for you too,
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
working at a real advantage. That was the case for Ole Miss, but also 4 trips inside the Georgia 20, 4 touchdowns. Keywan Lacey was a part of that. But again, Chambliss and his ability has a lot to do with that as well.
Chambliss is somebody we haven't seen in a while. Chambliss is a great equalizer in a lot of ways, and can score with his arm or with his feet. Lacey, the same thing. Look, I'm sure you've noticed this like I have, and we're just not talking about this year for those two, Trav. Kewan Lacey, we know he's coming back next year,
Mm-hmm.
and Chambliss basically just needs permission from the NCAA in order to come back, is what it amounts to. But Trev, I mean, during that Georgia game, Trinidad had plays that what half the quarterbacks in the NFL didn't make last weekend. So just an incredible performance as far as for Ole Miss, and they've certainly got their hands full coming up this week, don't they?
They do. Miami, kind of like Ole Miss, playing exactly the way you want to be playing at the
Yeah.
right time of year. Miami feels a little bit like Ohio State last year,
Mm-hmm.
kind of going into the playoff in a similar fashion. A lower seed going into the playoff. People forget last year, I think Ohio State was an 8 seed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Miami in a similar situation. Quarterback play, I thought, for Ohio State going into the playoff was a bigger concern for
Mm-hmm.
the Buckeyes than it ultimately proved to be. And I think I went into this playoff feeling the same thing about Carson Beck. But to Miami's credit, with the way they play defense and they can run the football, they have been able to prevent that from becoming too much of a situation for Carson Beck. Not that he isn't capable at
Mm-hmm.
times, and Malachi Tony and what he brings is a big play threat, but it's been retro football, just the way
It
Mario
has.
Cristobal likes it. Line of scrimmage football, run the ball, stop the run, and then with those two edge guys, be able to just absolutely get after opposing quarterbacks once you put them in obvious passing situations. Different this week, though. And I tried to
Mm-hmm.
think about it earlier. Who has Miami played this year at the position that is similar to Trinidad Chambliss?
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't Julian saying that
No,
you're trying to
no.
finish on coming up. I guess Marcel Reed did bring some of
Yeah.
that in the
Yeah.
first
He
round
did.
for Texas A&M, but
Mm-hmm.
Chambliss, as much as anything, even with the ability to improv and extend and make plays with his legs, it's the composure with him that
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
strikes me. And if you put him in a fourth down like Georgia did late in that game in New Orleans, he'll still take a shot down the field
Yeah.
too.
Sure
I mean,
will.
just as well-rounded a quarterback right now as we're seeing down the stretch in college football. So we need to talk about Georgia too, Brent. I think
Yeah.
Georgia has reached that point as a program where anything short of at least
Yeah.
playing in the
Yeah.
national championship game is viewed as a disappointment in that
Mm-hmm.
fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that, but it's also a shame when sort of Southeastern Conference championships aren't celebrated. But
Yeah.
it feels like the
Really.
last couple of years, that's been the situation for Kirby Smart, similar to what it was for Nick Saban at Alabama and what it had sort of returned to under Nick. Where would you kind of place this Georgia season in terms of success?
Well, look, Trev, I still say anytime you can win your conference, and you can make some hay in the playoffs, that that it's successful. I think they will look at that as being more successful as the year goes along during the off season. But you and I both know the mentality now for Georgia is we need to be able to win it, and if not, it's a failure. I'm not going to say that, but that there's some things I really do wonder about. The 26-day layoff that Georgia had, Trav, I'm just wondering how much that really did affect them, Georgia's defense. And look, you remember when Georgia got the turnover and they scored and they went ahead double digits, a lot of people thought the game was over at that point. It was not by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Georgia returns a lot of guys next year, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But at the same time, what does it say about the conference that both Georgia and Alabama, the bell cows of the conference, are short, and you get other teams that have risen to the ranks. And look, and with the drama going on at Ole Miss too, that and Lane deserves some credit for what he did for this team. Pete has really come through for them. So a lot of fascinating things have happened since we were last on the air.
And it sounds like a couple of those assistants are going to have moved on
Yes,
now to LSU. I think Joe
right.
Cox, one of those on the offensive side of the ball, but Charlie Weiss Jr. going to be around to call
Yes.
plays for another game in this college football playoff for Ole Miss, and that's really what you sort of lean on at this point. I thought he was
Mhm.
masterful in a lot of ways. Really helped his personal brand because
Mhm.
let's face it, a lot of the perception out there is that, well, it's still Lane. It's Lane's
Yeah.
offense. It's
Yeah.
Lane that's, interjecting and, maybe overruling on some things. But I think Charlie Weiss Jr. has shown that he is more than capable of handling his own shop, so to
Yes.
speak, when and if it comes down to it. So, yeah, I think for Georgia, it's an interesting offseason.
Yes.
And
It is.
the sort of the questions moving
Mhm.
forward, we know Zacharias Branch is going to move on to the National Football
Mhm.
League. I thought he was
Mhm.
a super addition via the
He
portal
was.
for the one season that he was with the Dogs. I thought he was great again against Ole Miss. Um, and then Gunnar Stockton, back for another year.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy, he isn't the prettiest quarterback in college football in terms
Yes.
of how he gets it done.
Right. Right.
But in an era where loyalty is becoming more and more tied to
Mhm.
NIL and, incomes and things like that, this is still a throwback dude in terms of his
Yeah.
willingness to
Yeah.
sell it out for Old State U. I mean, he took a couple of shots in that game
Really.
against Ole Miss where he didn't just get back up. He got back up, and it's like Bobo called design quarterback run right after it. It's like he got just absolutely crushed on the one
Yeah.
big completion down deep
Right.
inside Ole Miss territory. And then he comes right back. I think he read it. I think it was a read that he made. He runs right back between the hash marks for a touchdown.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
just not many guys like Gunnar Stockton in college football, or not, not as many as there certainly was. We got a question here in the show chat from Gregory. He's asking about Kewan Lacey's left shoulder. I know that's been a problem for him, but
Mhm.
that's another thing that stood out in that game for a guy to
Yes.
have a left
Yes.
shoulder issue
Oh,
and to
yeah.
run as hard as he does because he's not 220 pounds either.
No. No.
Um, I thought was very, very impressive. And it sounds like based on at least last night's injury or availability report for Miami and Ole Miss, it sounds like he's going to go because he wasn't even on the report. What about this matchup with Miami, though, Brent? What has to happen, in your opinion, for Ole Miss to be able to keep this story going and push its way to the national final?
I don't know if necessarily that Ole Miss is going to be able to deal with the defensive line. Look,
Hmm.
I'm you and I have a real affinity for the line of scrimmage, and whoever controls the line of scrimmage controls the game. But Trev, the thing that has fascinated me is I still believe that. But when you've got a guy like Chambliss who can do amazing things with his arm and his feet. I mean, again, he made what, Trav, about 3 plays in a row that you only see the NFL
Yeah.
um,
Well,
in that last game. And when you listen, when you can do that, even if you give up some of the line of scrimmage, he takes it back, doesn't he?
yeah, he is I like to call him an eraser
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
even when it's wrong, he makes it right. He can
Yes.
erase what's wrong and make it right with his
Hmm.
abilities. And it's just like the guy's getting more and more confident every time he goes out there. I'm with you. I like Miami a lot in terms of how they go about their business.
Yes.
And
Yes.
defensively, it's not just about Bain and the edge
Hmm.
guys. They are complete as a defense and they will hit you
Yes.
There is a physicality across the board. And I think all four of these teams that are left kind of have some of that in them.
Hmm.
I think give Ole Miss defensively some credit too, because we're going to talk a lot about the Miami run game in this matchup. But I, when I saw Georgia kind of pushing Ole Miss 6, 7 yards on runs early in that
Yeah.
game in the Sugar Bowl,
Yeah.
my thought was, boy, by the late third, and kind of the way it was in Athens in the first
Hmm.
matchup, late third into the fourth, this thing's going to really get downhill on
Yeah.
Ole Miss. But it didn't really happen. I know some Georgia fans point to Mike Bobo maybe for
Hmm.
more of that in terms of why it didn't happen. But I tend to give Ole Miss more credit and Pete Golding and that defensive staff because they were able to stem it
Hmm.
enough there in the second half and still put themselves in a position to get stops and win.
Listen, I'm curious what you think about Carson Beck at this point. He didn't have big numbers. I mean, he only threw for 138, but I mean, Trav, he's still at his best. He is I mean, he's more than a game manager. I know we like to use that from time to time as far as people in the media, but Beck, he didn't make a lot of mistakes. He had a couple of third downs that he made it in the first downs. I mean, he's kind of. I mean, Beck's not going to be what his counterpart is going to be at Ole Miss, but do you think is Beck at a good place right now in his career and his decision making in games?
He ought to be. I mean, he's been around. I think
Yeah,
this will be the third time he's seen Ole Miss too
yeah,
as a
that's a
starting
good point.
quarterback. People
Yes.
forget about that during his previous stint at Georgia. I think he was 1-1 with the Dogs, lost that
Mhm.
game in Oxford last year. But yeah, I mean, the recipe is what it is for Miami,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
showed up. It was shock and awe
Hmm.
with that defensive front.
Hmm.
Especially in dealing with Julian Sand. I mean, you look at Sand's numbers from that game, they were able to turn him over ultimately,
Yeah,
but 22 of 35 for 287.
right.
But they sacked him 5 times, picked him off
Yes.
twice.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're able to play that sort of takeaway game and make this more about Trinidad Chambliss having to do everything,
Hmm.
Chambliss is capable, far more capable of doing that.
Yeah.
But Mark Fletcher and the run game, it's kind of like Keywan Lacey against Georgia
Hmm.
because Ohio State's legit on defense and
Yeah.
legit against the run. So when you look at Fletcher with 90 rushing yards in that game, you go, well, they did a pretty good job. That was enough with the way
Yeah.
that game
Yeah.
unfolded. That type of production, and it makes you think. I'm sure Miami's going into this game tomorrow night thinking, okay, we knew it would be tougher against Texas A&M, but Miami lit the Aggies up on the
Yeah.
ground. You
Yeah.
knew it would be tough against Ohio State on the ground. Fletcher still went for 90 yards. They still had 153 rushing yards in the game. Meanwhile, Ohio State with just 45. Um, I still think if you're Miami, even with Chambliss on the other side and how much he can, again, make wrongs right,
Hmm.
if you can get a similar type of ratio there in the
Yeah.
run game, you're going to feel pretty good about your ability to control this game because that's where it's got to start for Miami on
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah.
They they
Yeah.
have to get the kind of game they want because we know the kind of game Ole Miss wants, and that's
Oh, yeah.
somewhere north of 75, 80 plays on
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah. And Trev, how about guys like James Bronkemeyer
Yeah.
on that Miami O line who has kind of found himself and really done a tremendous job along that way. And again, I mean, what they, I'm not saying what they did Ohio State that they'll do in this game, but the reality of it is, I mean, Ohio State had one first down in the first quarter,
Hmm.
and they outrushed Ohio State 153-45. Now that doesn't sound like much, but Trav, that's three times the rushing
Yeah.
yardage
They
that
tripled it.
that Ohio State has. When you got that, you can control a game, can you not?
Yeah, you can. And again, it was like shock and awe
Yeah.
with the defense and the way they went after that Ohio State offense there and got to that 14-0 lead, especially after Keontae Scott with the pick six
Yeah.
there in the second quarter. Then you start really thinking Miami can do this, and Miami can do it the way they want to. Now,
Yeah.
Ohio State isn't a tempo team. They
Yeah.
don't challenge you
Right.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M really not a tempo offense. So this is going to be different. This is
Yeah.
going to be different for
Yeah.
Miami on a couple of different fronts. And I thought also, you know, there were a couple of times in this game where Ohio State got it to like a one-score game from that 14-0 deficit, 14-7 there in the third quarter. And it wasn't a touchdown that Miami answered with, but Carter Davis with a big 49-yard field goal
Oh,
to
yeah.
push that thing back out to a two-score lead.
Yes.
I mean, that's more of what Miami obviously
Mhm.
wants in this matchup because as good as Miami is defensively, it's not just Trinidad Chambliss, okay?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there are dudes. I mean, you look at the wide receivers for Ole Miss right now, like Harrison Wallace the
Mm-hmm.
third,
Mm-hmm.
Stribling. They both go over 100 yards against Georgia, and we thought that Georgia defense, especially the back end, was playing at a higher level. So they've got a couple of different tight ends that they can use. Daquan Wright. We also saw it even with
Mm-hmm.
Luke Haas, one of
Yeah.
the extra tight ends who caught a big touchdown pass against Georgia. There's a lot to account for with this Ole Miss offense, and that includes tempo and
Oh,
pace
yeah.
being a big part of it.
And one thing that really needs to be said that's almost overlooked is Miami won the game on all three phases. It's kind of
Yeah,
the same way Indiana does. And their Dylan Joyce, their punter,
yeah.
punt, he pinned Ohio State inside the 5-yard line on more than one occasion. I mean, though, Trev, aren't those the things that they do that people overlook that make a huge listen? If you've got to drive 95 yards to score, and I don't care how good you are offensively, that's an issue.
It is, and it's a real advantage if you have the edge and specialists in college football. And I'll say it again. With what Ole Miss got from the kicking game,
Yeah.
with two field goals of 55 plus, and then
Yes.
a game winner from
Yes.
distance too. You think about how tight you anticipate. I think Miami is actually 3.5 point favorite
Yeah.
out in
Yeah.
Vegas right now. You think about the kind of game you're anticipating tomorrow night out in Glendale. Uh, could be big, certainly big. Once again,
Mhm.
not a hot ticket, by the way, out in Glendale, apparently, which comes to the
Wow.
surprise of no one, Brent,
Yeah.
because I've been out there for national title games
Yeah.
when the two teams are from the East, especially
Mhm.
like
Yes.
Clemson and Alabama were in January of
Right.
2016.
Yeah.
Game day prices were about what you would expect for almost a spring game, and this is the
Oh,
national
Lord.
championship. So if you're a Miami fan, I don't know, a Ole Miss fan, you still got time maybe to get out there
Yeah.
uh, and make it happen. Hey, let's talk about Alabama because the Crimson
Yes.
Tide was one of those teams in one of those
Yes.
quarterfinals. That seems like 100 years ago now,
Yeah.
given the manner in which the Tide was dispatched by those Indiana Hoosiers. First and foremost, all the credit in the world goes to Indiana,
Yes.
Kurt Signetti, and
Yes.
the job that he's done there. Um, Alabama came out with some aggressiveness on
Mhm.
defense, got
Mhm.
after Fernando Mendoza early, but again, just an illustration of how comfortable Indiana is with who Indiana is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't flinch, didn't change course, no signs of panic, stuck to who they are. That means balance offensively,
Mhm.
hanging in there with the run game until you get it going. And ultimately they did. And
Yep.
by the end of the
Yep.
game, you had that sort of balance that you come to expect from Indiana at this point under Kurt Signetti and a defense that, down in and down out. And more than anything, something I really felt strongly about going into this game. This wasn't going to be Oklahoma all over again for
No.
Alabama,
No.
just because Indiana doesn't beat itself.
No.
Indiana isn't just going to hand itself over like Oklahoma can from time to time.
Well, and the amazing thing about them is they're so solid and offense, defense, and special teams. and then to not turn the ball over and give the opposition a real opportunity. Trev, how important early, and look, I know I get the score, but how important was it when Indiana was only had 3-0? Bama's got fourth and short, and they basically run a sweep instead of either throwing the ball or going straight up the
Jet
gut.
sweep. Yeah.
Yeah. Indiana holds them, scores after that. I thought that was a tremendously pivotal play early on.
Yeah. And I think when you're 14, 15 games into a season, you are who you are. And I
Yes.
think more importantly, your opponent knows who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Really.
even though you put a 240-pound back there in the
Mhm.
Wildcat,
Yeah.
um, there's not enough tape to totally support that even with that kind of guy in that
Yeah.
spot, that
Yeah.
they're going to mash you. And so Indiana
Mhm.
didn't really bite on that very much. No, it was pretty much complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought in the second quarter there, Alabama had a chance in a 10-0 game. Other side of the 50, Ty Simpson takes the wicked shot to the back, ends up cracking a rib. He would pretty much be out for the remainder of the game.
Mhm.
Tried to go
Mhm.
early in the third quarter. It
Yeah.
wasn't happening. But he fumbles again. The fumble issues reared their head
Yes.
for Ty
Yes.
Simpson. Indiana recovers, does what a number one team does, goes
Yep.
down and pretty much puts your lights out
Yeah.
before the half.
Right.
And that was essentially the game. And so, for Alabama, the bigger question is what happens moving forward. And what we've seen with Alabama is a pretty sizable exodus via the
Mhm.
transfer portal, and some guys expectedly taking the NFL route, like Jeremy
Yeah.
Bernard and Parker Brailsford.
Mhm.
But what did you make today of the news that Ty Simpson is going to make that jump to the National Football League?
Well, I really wasn't surprised necessarily, but look, to be realistic here, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I mean, if Ty had stayed, I mean, he again likely is a starter, but what happens to the other two guys,
Yeah.
do they stay, and how patient are they? And in this day and age, you're really not going to see that very much. So I think what this does, it certainly opens up the quarterback situation for Alabama, but still, Trav, there's an issue. They've got to find a way to run the ball better. I
Mhm.
think we're seeing wholesale changes on the offensive line, which really need to happen. And I think there'll be some staff changes once the portal is closed. So, frankly, I think this is a very important next 10 days or so for the time. They brought some guys in, Hollywood Smothers, like for instance from NC State. I think there's certainly some excitement about that, but this is a very important 10 days left for Alabama.
Oh, it is. I said, in the immediate aftermath of that blowout loss to Indiana, physicality across the board, not
Yeah.
just in the lines of scrimmage, just their approach in general at pretty much
Yes.
every position on the field, needs to improve. And so,
Hmm.
and also another point was that, Alabama shouldn't be for everyone. I
Yeah.
know a year ago, a lot was made.
Right.
Boy, Alabama brought everybody back. No,
Yeah.
hardly anyone of
Hmm.
note hit the portal. Well, sometimes that can be a bad thing. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a sign
Really
that
can.
things are too good or
Yeah.
things are too easy
Hmm.
or, it's never been that way. Nick Saban before the transfer portal, even when it was hard to transfer and there was consequences for
Yeah.
transferring, would have some attrition from his roster and also
Hmm.
his coaching staff. So I'm not necessarily the belief that, oh wow, you get everybody back.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
thing. I don't believe that. I think what we've seen in the last couple of days is perhaps that belief now within the facility going into year 3 with Kalen DeBoer is that,
Hmm.
we got to have those type of people in the program that it means everything to true
Yeah.
football guys. And that's the challenge, man, in this
It is.
still
It
fledgling
is.
era, is because everybody's getting paid.
Yeah.
So now what you
Yeah.
got to really find out is, okay, who are the
Mhm.
real football people?
Yeah.
Who are the real
Exactly.
football guys?
Mhm.
Because there are guys that are jumping around to 3 or 4 schools in 4 years. How the heck are they getting ready for the NFL?
Yeah,
Now,
really.
how the heck are they developing? And
Yeah.
the NFL, I think, is going to pay for this too,
Yes.
because they're going to
Yes.
be getting less and less, I think,
Mhm.
truly developed and ready players after 3 or 4 years. Um, but certainly for Alabama in the last couple of days, it's been very newsy. I don't think that's a bad thing. They've
Mhm.
lost a couple of offensive linemen. I thought Wilkin Formby was a little bit of a surprise given his
Yeah.
family
Right.
there in Tuscaloosa and
Mhm.
the legacy sort of status there with the school and the program. Now we find out today he's going to be at Texas A&M next year. Guess who
Yeah.
Alabama plays in Tuscaloosa next year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Texas A&M.
That's right.
Olaus Alinen, one of the offensive linemen who transferred out at
Mhm.
Alabama. He's going to Kentucky. Alabama's SEC opener in 2026 in Lexington. So it's just college football 2026 or 2025, whatever. You're going to lose guys that you're going to see, and you're going to see them here pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that they have had to do is they've had to transform this offensive line. I mean, we're in a different day now. For instance, Caden Strayhorn, the
Mm-hmm.
offensive lineman coming from Michigan as a true freshman. I mean, he's 6'3", 318. I mean, Bama's had guys well into what, Trav? Three, 340, 350,
Yeah.
and above. Caden Proctor, for instance. I think that's something that that's going to be changing. That they need to weigh less so they can move better. I think that's going to be important for them too. So, and they also brought in Caleb Woodson, who is a inside linebacker for Virginia Tech. But the offensive line changes have got my attention.
Yeah. Strayhorn, you're right. He's that kind of guy that you would think physically he's still got a couple of years
Yeah,
to develop. But this past season, Brailsford was playing at 290. So it
yeah,
kind of goes both ways at that center position.
hmm,
But certainly you're thinking Michael Carroll,
yeah,
Strayhorn are going to be some building blocks for this
hmm,
offensive line
hmm,
moving forward. You would like to think a 5-star freshman from 2025 and Jackson Lloyd is going to be on the cusp of being ready to go. They're still involved too
yes,
with a couple of offensive linemen out there, both from within the SEC and back over in the ACC. So the coming days are going to tell you a lot about Alabama's offensive line. Lost some defensive front people of note
yes.
too. Quay
Oh, yeah.
Rusall, James Smith,
Hmm.
a couple of former high school teammates who went to Alabama together. Looks like they could be on to their second destination
Yeah, yeah.
uh, together. But Alabama today picks up a big commitment, or in the last 24 hours, from Devin Tompkins, the
Hmm.
defensive lineman from Southern California. So
Yes.
this is kind of going to be the give and take. We didn't see it as much with Alabama a year ago, but we're definitely seeing it this time around.
Well, in the offensive line being quicker and lighter, shall we say, Trev, I think what they're also doing is, and they really need to do it, particularly for SEC play, is I think the other thing we're seeing is you get a line that is a little quicker, and you can run the ball better.
Mhm.
We mentioned Smothers a few minutes ago, and they've got some high school kids coming in that I think is going to help them. So, and look, that doesn't mean they're going to go back to running the ball 50-50 or 60-40 like they did under Nick Saban. But they're getting people now to where when they go back to running the ball, however much they run it, they'll be more effective doing so.
Yeah, you think of Ole Miss and you don't think of a running team,
Hmm.
but they run when they do run it with
Yes,
Lacey in that run game,
yes,
they run with purpose.
they do.
They run it to run it. They don't run it to, okay, we got to show you a run.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of a
really.
throwaway down. Ole
Hmm.
Miss runs it to run it, and that's kind of the what Alabama's got to get to.
Yeah.
when they do run the football. To
Absolutely.
your point, it's going to be a quarterback centric offense, which makes it even more fascinating with Simpson moving on to the
Mhm.
NFL. Now with Austin Mack, who we did see in the Rose Bowl in the second half against Indiana, he's been with DeBoer and Grubb at Washington and now
Mhm.
Alabama.
Mhm.
But it just feels like Keelan Russell is the guy that a lot of people can't wait to
Yeah.
see in
Oh,
this
yeah.
offense, kind of for the same reasons, maybe not to the extent that Trinidad Chambliss does it
Mhm.
for Ole
Mhm.
Miss,
Yes.
but he can do some things outside of design that can really, really help an offense keep it going.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they do, and there is a still another week left of the
Mhm.
portal to see what some of the other teams have been doing too. That's fascinating. Auburn bringing in Byron Brown
Mhm.
from South Florida, and many South Florida players. Jane Baugh coming back for Florida.
Huge.
Uh, it is, isn't it? And Trav, now we would have people would have laughed at this before. Florida getting an influx of Georgia Tech players, which frankly, the last 2 years, you get a player from Georgia Tech. That's a pretty good athlete, frankly.
Well, you're going to get a guy that's been coached with
That's
Brent Key
right.
and that staff. And if, hey, that John Summerall really wanted Buster Faulkner to run that offense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you brought him in, if he wants to bring Philo with him
Hmm.
from Georgia Tech at the
Hmm.
quarterback position, a wide receiver coming down from Tech, there's going to be that sort of crossover. I know Alex Golish back to Auburn is catching
Yeah.
some ribbing, and I've kind of even jumped in on that because it does feel like Golish is bringing everybody from Tampa
Yeah.
with him except
Yeah.
Ric Flair, except the Nature Boy Ric Flair. But I like it too
Yeah.
because when you're implementing your program, it's not
Hmm.
just about fits for what you like to do in your
Yeah.
schemes.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
every day in practice, how
Hmm.
you go about individual period reps. You're bringing with you on the field sort of I don't know, what do you call it? Someone that can show everybody else. This is how
Yes.
we do this drill.
Yes. Yeah.
Without a coach trying to explain it or show it on tape. I mean, you can do that too in the meeting rooms, which is
Hmm.
good. But when you go out to the practice field, you've got guys that this is how we play quarterback
Yeah.
in this program.
Yeah.
This is how we play corner. This is how you know what I mean? But
Hmm.
Byron Brown, uh, been very good in that offense, and has played a ton of football under
Yeah.
Alex Golish, and a bigger dude than you think too. So he's going to be a part of that run game at
Hmm.
Auburn to go along with the other pieces they will have there as well. What about how about Austin Simmons? I mean, Ole Miss is still playing, and
Yes.
Austin Simmons is pretty much already, I guess, the starting quarterback at Missouri for next year. It sounds like.
Basically. Oh yeah, yeah. And listen, what about Sam Levitt of Arizona
Yeah,
State,
jeez.
associated with Tennessee, and kind of yeah, some of these pickups I think could help some of these teams considerably.
Yeah, Sam Levitt, you're almost starting to feel a little bit of sympathy for. It almost feels like he's the backup guy everywhere. Now, I guess
Yeah, yeah,
he's gonna visit Tennessee, I believe,
yes,
on
yes,
Wednesday. He's with Lane Kiffin the last day or so.
yeah,
Then the
yeah.
Damon Williams seismic situation. I was just about to fall asleep last night, and this Damon Williams Washington
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
sort of just blows up on social media.
no
All the
doubt.
while, Sam Levitt is with Lane Kiffin at an LSU basketball game
Yes.
last night. So uh, I don't think Sam Levitt thought when he jumped in the portal from Arizona State that he might be sort of the bridesmaid
Yeah,
in a lot of these
yeah,
quarterback derbies. Also, I've seen where Michael Van Buren
yes,
of
yes.
LSU here in the last few hours has
Mhm.
agreed to move on to South Florida. So
Yeah.
just the interchange is fascinating. No doubt about it. Brent, anything else before we get out of here?
And by the way, Ashton Daniels from Auburn, I
Yeah.
understand, transferred to Florida State. If folks haven't heard that, boy, oh boy, Trav. I mean, how?
So Alabama will likely see him again.
Yeah,
They
yes,
saw him in the Iron
yes,
Bowl, and then
yes.
Alabama in week 3 of the 2026 season gets Florida State in
Yeah,
Tuscaloosa.
yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. The possibilities are just endless, right now of of irony that is going on here. So, but yes, we've got two big games this week. Then we've got some time off, and we'll get into this later on. But I mean, Trav, you've got two games this week,
Yeah,
and then you got nothing
yeah.
until the 19th. And I really do wonder. And look, we know the powers to be that are meeting, and I think a lot of that starts next week or the week after that. And they've got to make some big time decisions, and they've got to make them quick
Yeah.
if they want to make some changes for the coming year. So that's something that we're going to be following in the next few podcasts very closely.
No doubt about it. Still going to be plenty to talk about.
Oh,
And
yes.
for the Southeastern Conference, it's go Ole Miss go. Hotty
Yeah,
toddy at
yeah.
this point. To get the league through to the national championship game, it all rests on the folks from Oxford. Brent, always a lot of fun with you here on the channel. Look forward to doing it again next week.
Me too, bud. Take care. Thanks much.
For Brent Beaird, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us live right here on Reier on YouTube. Have a great rest of your Wednesday night, and we'll rejoin you right here on Roy real soon.